Oh, what's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Wow. So today we are back going to be talking about Survivor Season 36, Episode 10 of Ghost Island. Super, I guess, very interesting episode. So my name is Rachel.
And I'm Alyssa, and this episode of Ghost Island was indeed very interesting, but I'm not sure I'm pleased with the outcome.
Yes, so both Alyssa and I's winner picks have been voted out of the game now. Desiree was Alyssa's winner pick, and Brendan was my winner pick. So with this vote, definitely, I don't know, it's good and bad, I feel like, for certain people, and we'll be talking about it throughout the podcast, but I really think, I feel like this is a turning point in the game, basically.
Yeah, one of the things that I thought about this vote was that, or at least this episode, was that it kind of seemed to be setting up Kellyn's downfall in some ways. So I'm really interested to talk about, what this is going to mean for Kellyn in the future of her game, just because, yikes.
No. Yes, 100%. When we talk about Kellyn wanting to stay Navidi strong, everything like that, that is what I have written in my notes, Alyssa. We are on the same wavelength. But for this podcast, we are thinking of starting it sort of in backwards order than we usually do, starting with like Tribal and Desiree going home and then going through everything else. So Desiree is the person voted out this episode, third member of the jury. And I think for Desiree, honestly, like, this is a good move for Desiree. I think like her wanting to make a big move this episode, her wanting to switch things up, that is the way to go if you are Desiree. Like, she knows she's on the bottom and she needs to make a move to switch things up. And I think kudos for trying, but it just didn't work out. But I think this is a good plan for Desiree.
I would also say 100% of the reason it did not work out was because of Laurel, and I think that it was a bad move for Laurel to rat out Desiree, because basically all she's doing is kissing ass and making herself literally the perfect goat for the final tribal, because she'll do whatever Dominic and Wendell say, and she's not really fighting to do anything to be a huge resume builder, because she seems aware of the fact that she needs to have a resume, but at the same time she's very content to just kind of be like, I'm going to let Wendell and Dom stay in power. So.
No, I think that's really interesting, especially last episode when we were talking about like, oh, we really hope Laurel is going to make a big move against Dominic and Wendell, that kind of thing. And I think next week would be a perfect time. 9 people left and then 8 people left with this double elimination would be a perfect time to try to get some of these big dogs out of the game. But Dominic, Wendell, Kellyn, they all just have so much power right now, especially all 3 of them have hidden immunity idols. Next week is going to be a shit show because things are so up in the air. And I feel like you were saying, it would, even though we were like, oh, we want Laurel to have a really, really big blindside, watching everything unfold this episode, I feel like it's less and less likely to happen. And then we might even see like a Dom, Wendell, Laurel final 3. And that would be really crazy, I think.
Yeah, I guess I was just really disappointed with Laurel just because I feel like she's trying to be safe at a point in the game where safety is not your priority. Obviously you want to be you want to make sure that you're going to stay around, but I feel like this, having someone else come up to you and be like, oh, I want to get Dom and Wendell out, is a great thing for her, because it's kind of what she's already thinking about. But if someone else were to rat them out, then she could be like, oh, it was all Desiree's idea. And so I feel like if Laurel had gone along with the plan, then she would have gotten out a big threat. And at the final tribal council, she could have been like, oh, it was all Desiree's idea, but I was the one who masterminded it. So you don't get the bitterness because it wasn't her idea, but you still get the credit because you're the one who made it happen. So.
Yeah, and then when you keep on continuing to vote out, Dominic said, like, oh, the goats, like, loser people are wanting to overthrow the powerful players. If you keep voting out all of them, like, yes, it's good for viewer standpoint because we're like, we don't want to see Sebastian anymore. Like, who cares? We'd rather see, like, Wendell and Dominic still in the game. So on that hand, it is good. But from a gamer, like, standpoint view of things, it's not that good because someone like Wendell can 100% win this game. They are totally overshadowing everyone else on the island. And I think with this vote for Laurel, it definitely gains Wendell and Dominic's trust back if they ever were super, super iffy, since they were a little bit on the edge last episode. So I think it's good for Laurel in that sense because maybe they were a little bit iffy last episode with the whole foursome that they have going on. But Laurel and Jonathan cannot win against Dominic and Wendell. That power couple is way more strong than the Laurel-Jonathan power couple, which is the issue in this situation. So yes, you have like the big meat to sort of overshadow you and be the people being voted out first before you, but like at a certain point there's 9 people left next week. You need 5 for a majority, and they all have hidden immunity idols. It's going to be harder and harder to vote these big dogs out and prevent them from winning the game.
Yeah, that's the thing, because it's like they're gaining momentum, especially because they have people who are willing to like rat people out. And it's like, if I'm someone like Chelsea and Laurel decides to start like making waves, I might be like, you know what? Laurel ratted Desiree out, and that ended up working out really well for her. If I rat Laurel out, maybe I'll be the new Laurel for Dominic and Wendell, and then I'll get to go further. And it's like, yeah, I really feel like Laurel's not doing as much risk-reward management as she should be at this point in the game. Just, yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like with this vote in general, it's super interesting. Sort of an interesting dilemma. I feel like, do you vote for someone who's in your alliance but is trying to like stage a coup on the leaders, or do you vote someone out who you 100% know isn't working with you, like a Michael or someone on the Malolo tribe? Like, I feel like that is the dilemma that we see this episode. And I think it really goes back to, like, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. So with this vote, everyone is voting out their friend with Desiree, but keeping a freaking big threat like Michael still in the game. And every single vote Michael gets passed, I feel like, I don't know, you cannot have Michael in this game. I feel like I personally enjoy having him on the game, but for everyone else, having Michael going to every single tribal council basically so far, he has such a good story to tell at the end.
I think the thing is, like, Michael is also gaining momentum, but Michael's momentum is, like, of a different kind, because he's honestly, like, existing day to day, and I think he's very cognizant of the fact that, like, he can't win unless he does something, I guess, is the way that sentence should end, because it's like he doesn't have an idol anymore. He doesn't really have power. And like, obviously he was there when Jonathan found the idol on the merge beach, but like, that's not his idol. And, you know, I feel like the bottom people are only really keeping him around because it doesn't make sense to ostracize him. Because it's like, you know, I feel like Michael, anyone else on the bottom would gladly vote out Michael over themselves, obviously. But
I feel like for Michael, yeah, I don't know. It would be an easy boot because everyone would be down. That would be like practically unanimous. But now it is a 6-4 kind of vote. I think, you know, we honestly could see the Malolos get further in the game if they are willing to stick together, and if the Navidi crew keeps on like falling on each other. And honestly, playing this whole thing that Desiree started this episode, starting out like, hey, we need to vote out the big dogs, I feel like Sebastian and Chelsea could honestly go with the Malolos, and it could be flipped 6-4 the other way around. Angela maybe would go with them. Who knows? But like Sebastian, Jenna, super close, and then we'll just see from there. But I honestly feel like tides could be changing, and seeing it from this episode, everyone just wants to save their own ass. So like, okay, the tide is switching on Desiree. I feel like overall Desiree handled everything super poorly. She went just too crazy and loud when everyone was accusing her of things. And it's just like with this vote, they suppressed the dissenters of the tribe.
Yeah, I feel like one of the things that Desiree did really well, and possibly the only thing she did really well, was that she recognized that she was on the bottom. And I feel like there are some people like in the Malolo group who are kind of like sticking their head in the sand and being like, no, I'm going to be fine. Or not Malolo, the Navidi group, who are like, oh, I'm totally on the top of the Navidi like food chain. And it's like, I feel like it's a discussion that happens pretty much every season. I feel like is it better to be on the bottom of the majority or the top of the minority? And it's like, how you answer that question depends on who you are as a person. But like personally, I feel like some of these players would be better off if they were willing to jump ship, because really the only people who can win against Dominic, Wendell, and Kellyn are those other people. So it's like everyone would benefit from Dominic, Wendell, and Kellyn going home.
No, yeah, like honestly, the 4 people I think that are forefront in the winning of the game would be those 3, and then Michael I think is in there if he can get to final tribal council with like maybe Donathan, like Jenna, Sebastian kind of people. And I think like that would honestly be a great underdog story. I feel like personally for me, seeing the Malolo people always on top, I'm like, oh, I really want to root for the underdog kind of thing. And I feel like that could be a good story arc. Everyone loves an underdog.
Yeah, I feel like one of the things also with this story arc is that like a lot of people are talking about like reversing the curse. And I feel like there's not really a lot of curses left to reverse. You know? Maybe that's just like my thing, but I really think that like people need to stop focusing so much on reversing curses and start focusing more on like, this is my game and this is where I'm going to like stake my claim to survivor freedom or whatever.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I feel like the way that votes were read at Tribal Council made me nervous. I think that was a good ordering of the votes. But I just think in general, and maybe we'll get flack for this, but I feel like people this season are playing safe. I feel like everyone sort of just wants to be in this majority alliance. There isn't really big lines drawn in the sand. It's just whoever started with whoever is working together right now. And I think like everyone just wants to sort of have the safe vote. This episode with Laurel telling Dominic, and then Kellyn doesn't tell Chelsea about the vote because she can't trust them. Like, I don't know. This happened all naturally is what I'm trying to say. Like this whole lie blew up in Desiree's face. But I feel like if this were like, oh, next level survivor kind of thing, Laurel, Michael, all of them would be the ones creating this lie and then all getting on board with this lie. And then maybe Laurel would be the perfect one to go tell Dominic that like, oh, people are trying to flip. And then that saves Michael. And I think like we saw with this episode, 4 against 1 is hard to argue. And if it was all just a lie and Desiree was telling the truth, I feel like that would have been a great way to stir the pot.
Yeah, there's so many ways like you can stir the pot in Survivor, and I just like, I wish that like this was pot stirring and not someone shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah, like kudos to Desiree, but next level gameplay would be creating this kind of unnecessary drama or necessary to save someone in your alliance and then like throwing someone else under the bus. And maybe people have too many feelings or morals, but honestly, I feel like if you want to save your own ass, sometimes you have to throw other people under the bus. And I don't know, this whole secret alliance, I think, between Laurel, Dominic, Donathan, and Wendell is very, very interesting. I sort of am like, oh, it's like a Tocantins Exile Alliance. I sort of wanted to work out because of that, but then we're just going to see Dominic and Wendell train roll, steamroll everyone else on the island, which I don't really know if I want to watch.
Yeah, the thing is, like, if Wendell or Dominic were to win the game, it would be like, great, someone who deserves to win is winning. But at the same time, it's like, if it's this obvious from the start that they're going to win, it's less fun to watch, you know? So I'm really hoping what happens is they're gonna get screwed over, like in the double elimination episode. Like, it would be really cool to see like Dominic and Wendell go back to back.
That just stresses me out. When we talk about next time, I'm just anxious. So I guess moving along, Alyssa sort of mentioned it earlier, but Kellyn is wanting to stay super Navidi strong. And at first, when watching the episode, I'm like, this is so annoying. Like, why is she so cocky about Navidi? She's like, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's not going to happen. Michael's going home. I'm like, that would be, I don't know, just the way her confessionals were worded and everything that came out of her mouth this episode was sort of setting her up, I feel like, for a blindside. And I think it would have been an amazing blindside. Like, your own people flipped on you, but you were so, like, cocky enough to think, like, aha, the votes are going to Michael. So I guess good for her for not being so blinded, I guess, by her alliance. But I think, like, looking back on it for Kellyn, it actually makes sense for her to stay Navidi strong. I feel like Kellyn needs the Navidi people to stick together because at Final 7, since there would have been 7 Navidi left if they just pagonged all the Malolos, like, she would still have the numbers 4-3 against Dominic, Wendell, and Sebastian if she did an all-girls alliance with Chelsea, Angela, and Desiree. So at Final 7, even though they pagonged all the Malolos, Kellyn would have the upper hand, and then I think she goes Final 4 with all the girls, and then she's set up so freaking well for Final Tribal, and honestly probably wins in this scenario, I feel like. But I think Kellyn voting out Desiree this episode ultimately hurts her in the long run. Like,
yeah, the thing about Kellyn was like when she was talking about like, oh, Des and Chelsea would never betray me. They'd never do that. Like, I just normally, like, from just like a straight Edgic standpoint, they don't show the winners being so blatantly wrong in their assessment of the game. Because, like, she was wrong. Like, there is no way she was right because it's literally like Desiree and Chelsea are planning to vote you out. And then she's like, they'd never do that. And it's like, ugh. And I feel like I do think it was the wrong move for Kellyn, but it's also just like, yikes. Like you said, she could have been set up so well. And like, I feel like there were very few like things that could have gone wrong for Kellyn if people had like stayed on their course. But
yeah, like I feel like with this vote for Kellyn, who is Kellyn aligned with now, basically? I feel like she doesn't really have a solid alliance because she turned her back on Desiree, voted out Desiree, like strikes first kind of thing. Is she aligned with the guys in Wendell and Dominic? But in that situation, if it's like, oh, Kellyn, Wendell, Dominic, final 3, I don't see Kellyn winning in that scenario. And Kellyn didn't tell Chelsea about the vote this episode. Who the hell knows where Angela was going with this vote since we didn't see anything from Angela. So, like, I don't really, like, Kellyn doesn't have an alliance right now, I feel like.
Yeah, she really doesn't. And I'm so confused by, like, I understand why Kellyn would do it because it's like when you hear someone like who wants to betray you, that's like always a hard thing to do. And it's like, I feel like she might have responded very like viscerally to Desiree wanting to vote her out. But I also feel like one of the things was Desiree, from what I remember, like Desiree was more going after Dominic and Wendell, and then she'd go after Kellyn. Though I guess she did say Kellyn was like one of the biggest priorities. So it's like, I feel like if Kellyn had heard Desiree being like, oh, I want to get out the big threat, she could be like, well, but Dominic and Wendell are bigger threats because they're paired together. Or even better, Kellyn could be like, Desiree, you can be my right hand. You can be the Wendell to my Dominic. You can be the person who like becomes the other half of the power couple, just because like Kellyn, I feel like, is the only powerful player in the game who doesn't have a power couple, because I guess Michael kind of did with Libby, but then Libby got voted out. So I don't think Michael would be like necessarily looking for another half of a power couple, even though I would argue that he and Libby weren't much of a power couple in the first place. But that is a different conversation for a different time. I just feel like there are different ways that Kellyn could have diffused the situation. But I guess also part of that is Desiree did not do very well at diffusing the situation, like we were talking about earlier. So I guess it's just Kellyn kind of, she really fucked this one up just because she talked herself and everyone in her alliance into a corner. And I feel like one of the things is she's essentially made herself markedly less powerful. And in doing that, like, she's really, like we were saying, she's really the only one who can compete against Wendell and Dom. So I feel like Wendell and Dom are just gonna, like, end up steamrollering her. And I don't know. I think that's just frustrating because she did it to herself. And one of my things is on Survivor, I hate it when people, like, it's disappointing when you see someone, like, fuck someone else over. Like, it's disappointing when you see, like, JT give up Malcolm in Game Changers. But I feel like it's even more disappointing when you see someone become so obsessed with something in Survivor. Or not even obsessed, but, like, they do something that ends up being the cause of their own downfall. Because then you're like, you literally could have done anything else and it would have turned out better for you than this. And I guess that's one of the reasons why, like, Ghost Island as a season is kind of frustrating, because you have to relive all of those moments where you're like, you should have done literally anything other than that thing that you just did and you would have been fine. Survivor stresses me out so much at times like this. And oh, yikes. But I feel like also Wendell and Dom, like, they did the exact right thing in this situation. And I'm just like, yikes. And I also feel like we become, like, so aware of the fact that Dom is, like, not even a whirling dervish, because he's so calm about it all, but he, like, knows what's happening because he calls the goats the goats. And I'm like, it's true, but also, I feel like in some ways that could also be setting Dom up for a future downfall, which would mean that Wendell would likely be the winner, just because it's like Dom is talking about how, like, when you betray the family, and it's like, you're not a mafia yet, and if you are a mafia, then, like, all the... If that alliance is a mafia, then Dom is the godfather, and, like, that isn't going to end up well for him, because, like, he's going to be the one in the mafia who ends up getting targeted by, like, the police or whatever. So, yes, Kellyn did a sucky thing. Wendell and Dom did a good thing, but Dom also kind of did a bad thing. So,
yes. Did you talk about Callan getting angry at Dominic?
Did I? I don't think so.
Okay. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like Kellyn getting angry at Dominic was a really bad move this episode. I think, like you were saying about the Edgic stuff, like her blowing up at Dominic, like what's the point of that? It just makes him sort of uneasy with you. And I think Dominic probably realizes that Kellyn is a strong player now because like people like Desiree wanted to target her and he was like grouping them together as a strong player trio. So
yeah. I think edgically Wendell is in the best place of the three winner prospects that we talked about to be a winner. And I guess Michael is as well, just because he's shown being like very astute. But I feel like of the three main ones, Wendell is probably the most likely winner. Based solely on Edgic.
Do you watch Edgic now or pay attention?
I skim.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like look at Edgic or anything, but I feel like Wendell is probably like, oh, the most nicest guy out of those three, and probably has the best chances of getting to the end over someone like Michael. And I don't know. I think with this episode, Kellyn's like winner edit or whatever really takes a toll. I think when Kellyn is hammering Dominic, like, why do you have to be so bossy kind of thing? And Kellyn needs people on her side because she doesn't really have an alliance now. And when you're being sort of rude and like crazy towards people that you might want to work with, it sort of alienates them, I think. So I feel like Kellyn's stock went down a lot this episode.
Yeah. I was talking about, I feel bad. I feel bad for Kellyn, but also like.
Why do you feel bad?
Just like she did this to herself.
Yikes. But yeah. I guess anything else that you have to say about Kellyn?
Nah, I said it all.
Okay, good. So I think moving on to the reward challenge, honestly, it was sort of meh. I mean, I liked how the puzzle had extra blocks, and that was interesting because otherwise it would have just been like too plain and too easy. But I did like the extra blocks thing.
Yeah, I liked the extra blocks thing, and I liked how at first it seemed like Dominic was just saying there were extra blocks because he was stupid, and then it was like, wow, there's actually extra blocks.
Yeah, I think the one thing about this reward challenge is with the Ghost Island picking rocks, I am like, CBS with this, you really need to stop having them pick rocks to go to Ghost Island. It just takes away so much strategy that these people could be having on the island to pick someone to go to Ghost Island. Like, yes, it makes sense. People, I feel like, are always going to dissent about who gets sent to Ghost Island. But having the easy way out of just picking rocks every single time, which is probably what we'll see until the rest of this season, because it doesn't really seem like that many people will be going to Ghost Island anymore, it gets rid of so much freaking strategy. Like, you either, if there were strategy, you're picking someone in your alliance to go because you want your alliance to have extra advantages, or you're sending someone who's like been a million times so less people have advantages. And like, there's just so much strategy revolving around that.
Yeah, it would be cool if it was like a majority instead of it had to be unanimous. But
yeah, I feel like a majority could be super interesting as well. Just like having the option open for people to like, oh, vote for who they'd want to send to Ghost Island. If they're nervous about screen time or whatever, like you can cut that. Just tell us who goes to Ghost Island. Maybe like how the votes went or just the majority went. Who really cares? But just having that extra layer, rubbing people the wrong way, sending them versus not sending them, like force these people to pick for Ghost Island. I feel like leaving it up for chance on who may or may not go for $1 million advantage is $1 million decision. So all these people getting these advantages at Ghost Island, I don't know. I really want them to frickin' pick someone for Ghost Island.
Yeah. I just think also, like, they never even seem to try to do something unanimously. Like, they're always just like, let's go to rocks. So.
Or, like, with this episode, why doesn't Jonathan pick? If he's not picked for the schoolyard pick, why don't you have him have the hard, tough decision that involves strategy and feelings and voting, like, sending someone on the losing tribe to Ghost Island? Like, I don't know. It doesn't really make sense. And for someone who has gotten an advantage from Ghost Island, I feel like you can sort of count out, oh, advantages will probably happen like every 2 or 3 times people go to Ghost Island. So maybe people should start wanting to go to Ghost Island. Like, you could get your $1 million advantage to win the freaking game at Ghost Island, and everyone is just going random on this. It really does not make sense.
Yeah, it really doesn't.
Yeah, so I don't know with that. Like, it's just sort of annoying. I really feel like force these people to freaking pick. It's not that hard. It adds another layer to the game. It adds a lot more strategy, I feel like, especially with something so risky like Ghost Island, losing your vote. You need to send people that, like, involve strategy. Stop letting it be up to chance.
Yeah. Especially because I feel like with the, like, reward challenges, when they do a schoolyard pick, it's like, pick the members of your alliance, and then if you win, you all get to go on reward together, and if you win, you can also vote unanimously to send someone to Ghost Island, you know?
Yeah, or even like the reward challenges where one person would win and then they would be able to pick like 3 or 4 people, and then people got butthurt because they were in the alliance but didn't get picked. Like, that's when that person wants to flip and like switch up things in the game. How come we aren't seeing that anymore on Survivor? Like, make these people freaking uncomfortable. I don't understand.
Neither do I, man.
So I think this goes well into the reward challenge food that we see. They go in the helicopter, great. Go have a picnic, great. Sebastian makes another joke about being high, that was funny. But honestly, I feel like all of this was a waste of time. We didn't really see any strategy talk. Everyone was just like, oh, chummy, chummy, buddy, buddy, I like food. Michael's like, don't vote for me, I want to work with y'all. And Kellyn is like, no. But what does that add to the episode? Nothing.
I think it more just adds to, like, Michael's storyline, like, he's trying, but...
Like, I feel like that conversation could have happened back at camp as well. Like, yes, everyone is like having the food, leaving camp really brings people closer together. But if all you're doing is having a freaking picnic on a mountain, how close is that going to bring you together? Because even in this scenario, Kellyn, Chelsea, Sebastian weren't willing to, like, oh, open up and work with these people. They were just like, haha, maybe kind of thing. Like, maybe with these reward challenge excursions, you have the things from Survivor's past that was a big turning point. Like, oh, Final 4 deals were made on this reward. Have something that does bring these people closer together to maybe want to work together. And maybe there's just too many people left in the game to have those conversations. But I don't know. I feel like something is wrong when we aren't seeing any strategy talk at these reward challenges. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, just because it's like, when people get so set in their ways, it doesn't make for good TV. And it's like, okay, sometimes people are just going to want to be, like, with the group that they want to be with. But I agree that it's frustrating.
Yeah, I think Ghost Island also this episode was a waste of time as well. It was only interesting, I feel like, because Angela didn't get a vote, and we haven't seen nobody get a vote yet. So I think that was interesting. For her going to Ghost Island, I think she has to play the game to either lose her vote or get the advantage. She's not I don't know, it didn't really seem like a pivotal vote this episode. Like, she has the majority seemingly. So if I were her, you play the game. But I feel like the thing with this was like, why did we not hear from Angela? Like, who was she going to vote for this episode if she had a vote? Was she left out and was going to vote for Michael? Was she in the know and was going to vote for Desiree? Like, we have no idea what her mind was, where her mind was with this vote. So it really leaves all of us in the dark. I would have wanted to know where she was going to vote.
Yeah, I just feel like at this point, the fact that we didn't hear anything from Angela just makes her seem like so irrelevant. And it's like, okay, we understand that she's mostly irrelevant, but like, still.
Yeah, it just makes her even more irrelevant, I feel like, because we don't hear anything that she's thinking. And I think this also goes with Chelsea winning the immunity challenge. Like, we didn't hear from Chelsea. She wins a freaking immunity and she votes for Michael to go home. So was she just left out of the vote? Was it a way for her to regain trust with Kellyn by voting for Michael and not Desiree? Like, where were all of these people's minds at? So we're basically left in the dark about Angela, Chelsea, Sebastian, we still hear nothing from. So, like, I really just wish these certain people would get some more screen time so we would hear, like, oh, where their head is at, especially at this kind of vote where basically one person was left in the minority in Chelsea voting the wrong way this vote. And, like, Angela didn't get a vote. Where was she going to vote? That would have been interesting and good for, like, us as viewers wanting to know the gameplay and where people's minds are at.
Yeah, I feel like just the fact that basically like 5 people are getting screen time is making it super hard. Because, yeah.
Yeah, so that was my rant, I guess, about this episode being sort of crappy in that way with unfair screen time. I want to know where these people are voting. Moving on, I guess, to Jonathan finding the immunity idol. When him and Michael go out to look for the idol, I was like, damn, Michael is going to find 3 freaking idols. I was like, about that. But Jonathan finds the idol, and during this time, he gets so many freaking screen captions. I was dead. Every single thing that came out of his mouth had to be subtitled.
I thought it was interesting because, like, Michael was talking about how, like, oh, it's not a good idea to tell someone when you find an idol, but then Jonathan literally tells, like, everyone. Like, he's like, there's an idol under here I need to get. And I'm like, yeah, it's good when you have people who can help you, but also, like, honey, now, like, half the camp knows that you have an idol.
I honestly sort of wish it was a super idol. I feel like that would have added a very interesting layer to the game rather than having it as a normal idol. So, like, oh, maybe Jonathan found the first half of the idol and he needs someone else to go help him find, like, the second half, and then the other person has to hold on to the second half and make it like a super idol. So the person you pick to help you find the second half is really someone you have to trust, someone you are working with, and that would just be super interesting drama, I feel like, on the island, depending who Jonathan would have picked in that kind of scenario. But yeah, like you're saying now, all of Malolo knows he has an idol. Laurel has so much information about all the idols. Kellyn's idol is the only one that people don't know about, seemingly. We haven't seen her tell, like, Chelsea or Desiree yet. So I guess that's good for her. But if I were Jonathan, I would not play this idol for anyone else but yourself. I think him playing it for someone like Michael would be the dumbest thing to do.
I feel like there are situations where playing it for someone else could be good, but I cannot think of one for Jonathan at this moment.
Yeah, like, Jonathan is probably on the bottom of the Malolos, like, winning-wise with Jenna. If Jonathan goes to tribal with Laurel, I don't know. But if he goes against Michael, I feel like he's no way winning against someone like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be zen because it, like, frustrates me somewhat, so.
Yeah, sometimes when you're just quiet, I get really confused and then don't know if you're like going to talk or you're just quiet, and then it has this awkward silence.
Sometimes I try to talk and then I'm like, what are words? So that's fun.
Yeah. Immunity challenge, I feel like nothing really happened. We mentioned it. Chelsea won. All 3 immunities so far have been won by women. Yay. But I would have liked to hear what Chelsea was voting. That was my part.
I would have liked to hear literally anything come from Chelsea's mouth.
Even when she won, she was like about to cry and didn't even talk. So nothing really came out of her mouth.
Like, there are some people, like Jenna, Chelsea, and Sebastian, it's like they speak maybe once an episode. Oh.
And it's more like agreeing. When we saw Kellyn, Chelsea, and Desiree talk about, Kellyn was like, are you guys trying to go against me? Chelsea was like, oh, no. Like, just saying no. Like, oh, you never do that. Like, that's nothing substantive. It doesn't really make sense. Angela was left out of that conversation. Just goes to show where Angela is on the totem pole. So that's very interesting. I don't know. I think overall, we don't really have that many people we're rooting for, I guess. And we've said this since the merge of everyone else going home pre-merge. Like, I think the 4, maybe even 3. I feel like Kellyn's stock this episode to win has gone down a lot. I really don't know with her and the jury if she would have a lot of command over the jury or any jury sway unless she goes with Chelsea and Angela to final 3.
I think that, like, she could come back from this, but it would take some work.
Because I don't know. I can't tell if she's like respected on the island or not. So it's very interesting. Everyone is like, yeah, she has a great personality. She's playing hard. But I guess we'll see. It seems very interesting, I think, with that aspect. I feel like with someone like Wendell, people do respect him. And maybe it's like a male-female thing. But yes.
Yeah, I think one of the things is about Kellyn is, like, we see a lot of times that, like, the nice people aren't the ones who win because people feel more betrayed by them when they get voted out by them. So
I guess we'll see next episode. It's going to be a crap show. 2 vote outs at the same tribal. I really hope, like, they set it up in a way that it's not a straight pagong or, like, something happens at this tribal council. And it's like, I don't know. I feel like 2 people winning immunity at this next immunity challenge is interesting because I feel like when they do back-to-back tribals, usually there's an immunity challenge of like trivia or something at tribal council. So you can't really like plan ahead to the second tribal council because first off, you don't know exactly where the votes are going to fall. The first episode or like the first vote out of the double boot. And then whoever wins immunity for the second episode, like that could ruin your plans. So you need to be thinking like 3-4 steps ahead. But I think like if it is just a straight double boot, like, okay, go vote, someone's out, go vote again. It could be a straight pagong, and that's what I'm really like anxious about. Or it could be like Celebrity Big Brother. Marissa freaking gets to vote out 2 people right before final 2. Doesn't really make sense, gives her too much power. And I think with 2 people having immunity, 4 people having hidden immunity idols, potentially 6 people could be safe this next vote. And I feel like we could see 1 to 2 idols being played this next episode. And I don't know. It's just going to be too much.
And then we can have another Cerise situation where, God bless her soul, like, she did not deserve that. But
that is what I am anxious about. I don't want it to be another like advantage idol get in kind of thing. 6 people being safe, that means you only have 4 people to vote for. And maybe everyone flushes their idol the first tribal and then everyone's not safe for second tribal. Could be very interesting. It's like, do you play your idol the first round of voting or second round? Like, when will the votes fall for you? So I think that could be really interesting. But they also said 2 separate tribal councils in the preview, so hopefully that means all 10 people are at one tribal and they just do 2 tribals back to back, not like separate as in 5 people go here, 5 people go there, and you each vote out one person, because that would be more shitty.
That would be scary.
Like Malcolm will go home then. Frick.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways that like this upcoming tribal could go wrong. And I'm trying not to think too hard about it, because then I'll just be so anxious that I won't ever watch. And
yeah, I think the way this seems like it's probably going to show down, I think we will probably see one big dog player go home, and then we'll probably see a lesser named person go home as well. It'll be interesting who is playing their idols, things like that, to be safe, and then maybe a revote or something if no votes are cast. But I feel like we are all going to be sort of sad and angry for the next podcast, after next episode, I think, with this weird double tribal, 2 tribals, like who even knows? Bad things are going to happen for the people that we like. So
yeah, I feel like it's going to be like Sebastian and Kellyn going home. And like, I wouldn't be mad about Sebastian, but I like Kellyn, so.
Yeah, and then with that, the Malolos would have a majority. So I don't know. I think Michael could also be on the block to go home. I think, yeah, for big dogs, it would probably be between Michael and Kellyn as one of the votes, or one potentially going home, then someone like Sebastian, Angela, Chelsea, or Jenna as the second vote or first vote, whichever order that they feel like voting people out. I feel like for Michael, obviously, he's just a big target, vote him out. But for Kellyn, I feel like she's probably the kind of person to be voted out with an idol in her pocket. And I think that's something that we could see next episode.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yes, Cerrone. So that is basically this episode. Let us know what you think down below. Good move, bad move, and for whom. Yeah, I don't know. Sort of anxious for next week, but we will see you guys in a week or so.
Bye.